Welcome Bryan to the stage. Bryan Kett.
Hi. After college, my best friend Dave moved to Ethiopia to start a chicken farm because that's a thing that people do. And a couple of years ago, I finally told him that I would go and visit him, and then I immediately regretted saying that because Dave and I are very different. Dave is a risk taker. Dave once climbed a volcano in an East African war zone and got heat stroke. And afterwards, when I asked him about it, he said it was an interesting experience. And so, on the other side of that, I don't take risks. I get so worried that leftovers are going to go bad that I make myself eat them as soon as possible. I had salmon for breakfast. And so, but in spite of myself, I went. I took the 19-hour flight to Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and I met up with Dave, and he said, as your welcome present, we're going to go see something neat. And so we got in this Russian car from the 80s that was just held together by rust and like willpower, and we took off rattling into the desert, and eventually we arrived at this mountain, and we got out, we met our guide. This is this young Ethiopian man who's going to take us the rest of the way. And I didn't know where we were going, but we began hiking up this mountain. And a couple hours later, we arrived at the base of this 40-foot vertical sandstone cliff. And our guide took off his shoes and said we had to do the same out of respect. And I looked at Dave, and I was scared. I said, now what? And Dave responded by taking off his shoes too. And I watched as he and our guide began to scale this vertical rock face barefoot with no safety equipment. And I thought, no, it's not going to happen. There's no way whatever we're going to go see is neat enough to necessitate this. You know, what's neat is solid ground. And so I turned around just to look for a place where I could wait this one out. And when I turned around, behind me, out of nowhere, I have no idea where they came from, were these two ancient Ethiopian mountain men. And they were wearing these tattered suit coats. They're like 90 years old. And they gave me these big smiles where it looked like they had way too many teeth, like sharks. And they kept motioning to the wall. And I was so worried about upsetting them that my New Balance cross trainers came off, and I headed over. And I had no idea how to begin to climb this thing until these guys began instructing me in broken English with where to put my feet and hands. It was right foot here, left hand there. And I listened to them like I was playing Twister. And I made my way up this wall, and I was about halfway up, maybe 30 feet up, and I turned and I looked out behind me, and from that vantage point, like I could see all the way to the horizon. These plains just stretched on and on and on. And when I turned back to continue climbing, there, cut out in the rock right next to me, was a pile of human skulls, just stacked up like a Thanksgiving centerpiece. And Dave yells down, oh, fun fact, those are the bones of villagers from like 1,000 years ago. And I thought, like, that's not fun. How was that supposed to make me feel better? Because in that moment, the gravity of my situation really did hit me. We were way off the map. There were no hospitals nearby. And if I fell, like, that could be it. Maybe these bones were from villagers who fell like 1,000 years ago when their best friend was taking them to see something neat. And just overcome with fear and anxiety, suddenly I couldn't move. I was frozen there on that rock face, and minute after minute ticked by until I felt something crawl across my foot. And I looked down to find that one of these mountain men, having sensed my hesitation, had climbed up after me in his suit coat, and he grabbed my ankle, and he moved my foot to a spot higher up on the wall. And then the other mountain man climbed up beside me, and he grabbed my wrist, and he moved my hand to a spot higher up on the wall. And these two guys worked in tandem just to reposition me, all four of my limbs, like I was this giant, anxious marionette puppet, until I reached the top. I did it. I pulled myself over the edge. I looked around, and I saw nothing. Just Dave grinning like an idiot. And terrified, I again asked him, now what? And he pointed to this metal door off to the side that I never would have seen. And I was ready to kill him, because this was the something neat. But my adrenaline subsided. We opened the door. We entered, and we found ourselves in this cavernous room that Dave explained was a church that had been hand-carved in secret during the 6th century so those worshiping could escape religious persecution. It was one of the most remote places on earth, and it was still in use. Okay? On the walls and ceiling were these beautiful fresco depictions of holy people, places, millennia old, and around the perimeter, all these men in these white robes sat meditating. Some of them hadn't been off the mountain for 50 years. And it was silent, and it was otherworldly, and all this animosity I had towards Dave dissipated, and instead I just became so overwhelmed and humbled to be in that place. And it wasn't in any religious sense, but just in the sense of being able to bear witness to this cradle of humanity. And it was all because I took those risks. And some risks were worth it. And Dave just looked over at me and he just said, "Pretty neat, huh?" And I was so moved that all I could do was just nod. And then, thinking about whatever else Ethiopia might have to offer, I asked, "Now what?" Thanks.
Bryan Kett, everybody. Bryan Kett.